Hey everyone, welcome to Our Small Footprint. My name is Nyssa, and if you're new here, we are a family of 8 who live off-grid in Australia. Today is one of my standard food videos. So because we only shop 6 times a year, what I do in between those, really popular grocery haul videos is I do other things. And some of those are, day in the lives and meals in a week and catch up and lifestyle videos and stuff like that, though I kind of suck at them and I am trying to get better. The other main thing that I do is these, which are food prep, planning and preservation videos. So because I only shop that often, there is a lot of things that go into making sure that the food that I purchase lasts the entire time that we need it for our family of 8. So when I first started, I started doing these videos and sharing them in basically just what we've ended up calling them is like day in the life of my kitchen, because it's just literally when I go in the kitchen I turn the camera on and film what I'm doing food wise to help out to make sure that we have enough food to last that time period. So I think this is part 3 of the October, November, December span. I'm due to go back shopping on like the 16th or something of December. So we're 4 weeks in, maybe 3.5 weeks in, almost 4 weeks in, of the 8-week period. And this is what we've been doing with the food over this is obviously, I'm about a week behind. This filming is like a week prior to what I'm voicing over now, but this is what we're doing and how we're getting along and what we're doing with food. Darryl and I changed our diet this shopping period, and we're eating mostly ketovore, which has made things a little bit challenging in some aspects, and some of the food prep, planning and preservation a little bit different to normal. So that has been, part of trying to get these videos out. It has been a little bit more difficult this month because of those things. We've also shopped a few extra. Darryl had to go into Toowoomba last week, and I actually got him to grab some of the frozen cauliflower rice and some cottage cheese. So what I'm going to have to do is when I do the next groceries, I'm going to have to add some of that stuff into it. Now this grocery period, what I spent for this 8 weeks was actually quite low, and I was wondering why. And I think it's because I reduced some of what we bought because Darryl and I weren't going to be eating it, but I didn't necessarily replace it with anything. So that's what we've had to do a little bit with a couple of when Darryl's gone into, so he had an appointment in Toowoomba on yesterday, and when he went I did a click and collect. We also have a Flybuys promotion at the moment on his Flybuys, that if we spend $50 a week for 4 weeks we get 10,000 Flybuys points, which is $50 worth of Flybuys points. So we'll probably do that any time that he's not going into Toowoomba. I can just get it sent to mum's, and it's only $50 a week. We make $50 worth of Flybuys points, so we make one of those shops back is the theory. So we did that as well. But yeah, so come along, see what we've got done in this, few day period, and then I'll see you at the end. So I buy these rolled pork roasts from Costco every shopping period, and I normally buy 2 to 5 of them depending on what I'm going to do with them, because sometimes I turn them into sausages, normally only in the cooler weather though, because it's a lot of time for the meat to be exposed, and with flies and everything else it's just too hard, and the mincer gets too hot and things like that. So we generally only buy 2 or 3 in the hotter season. But one of the things we love making is the smoked pork roast. Now I haven't had a smoker in a long time, and I got this new smoker, which everyone on Facebook and everything would have seen. So we have this new pellet smoker that I'm testing out and using to make our pork roasts. So first up I made the sweet and smoky rub that I make. Now because I normally have brown sugar in this, instead I'm using brown monk fruit erythritol blend, which is the sugar alternative, so that we still get that that moisture from the sugar style granular thing, because it still turns to sort of liquid like sugar does, but also gives it a little bit of a sweet and smoky flavour as well. So I used the monk fruit erythritol blend of brown sugar, some salt, some pepper, paprika. I've actually only got this sweet paprika at the moment because I got this cheap at Costco, and I need to buy some more smoked paprika, but the sweet paprika works too. Mustard powder, garlic, onion, shake it all up in a jar. Now we got a big 20-kilo bag of these small red skin potatoes, which I really like, so I filled some trays with those so that I can cook the rind over the top of them. Now some of the potatoes were a bit flawed and I had to cut out some chunks of them, but this bag was really cheap, so that's to be expected. And potatoes don't last overly well in our weather at the moment, so when it's hot I have to be careful not to buy too many potatoes because they will go bad just sitting in my kitchen, because obviously the kitchen is hot. So I cut out the bits that need to be cut out, cut them into pieces, and got them all into the cast iron trays. I filled 4 full trays with these, because whatever potatoes the kids don't eat tonight will be frozen, par cooked like that, so that they can just be thrown in the freezer to be eaten later on in the month. I cut the pork into smaller pieces for roasting and for ease of removing the rind, but also because I slow smoke this, the smaller pieces mean that I can get it done in, an afternoon instead of like a 10-hour day. I sliced the rind off, leaving some sort of the same amount of fat on the roast as taking with me to cook over the potatoes, cutting it into smaller pieces so it has the opportunity to get crunchy as it cooks. I evenly spread the rind out over the potatoes, spread it well with oil, and sprinkled liberally with salt. Once all of the trays were going in the oven, I got back to the roasts. I slathered Dijon mustard over the whole surface area, making sure to get it in all the little nooks and crannies, and then coated them with the rub. I love the flavour of Dijon, but Dijon really helps to hold in that moisture, but it also helps to hold that rub onto the meat, and it creates this really nice bark on it, so it ends up with this crunchy, flaky bark over the outside of the meat and sort of like a crust on it, which helps to keep the moisture of the pork, but gives it lots of flavour. I really like those little external pieces. The sugar, of course, helps with a bit more moisture, as I said, and then you've got all the seasonings on there as well, and because I've cut these smaller, all the seasonings are able to permeate the meat better than if you had just had one giant roast. I popped it in the new smoker with a probe in the largest piece and water in the water pan and got them going. This was the first time using the smoker, and there was a few hiccups. I got some wood pellets stuck at one point. I couldn't get it to heat at one point. I couldn't get the auger to run and things like that, but once it was going, it was very easy. And the app is great, though the notifications from the app are pretty shocking, but the app itself was quite good to be able to just track it from inside, and everything ran really well with it. This is what the potatoes looked like when they came out. Now, unfortunately, because the smoker was going, then that's all I could smell. So I didn't smell the edges of these potatoes starting to burn, which that's fine. You have to run the oven pretty high with the potatoes in there to get the rind to get really crispy. So there's a little bit of a balancing act. And of course, because I could access the app for the smoker from inside, I walked away and didn't realize. So some of them got a little bit burnt on the edges, but that's fine. The animals enjoyed those ones that the kids wouldn't eat. Once the roast had hit 64 degrees internal temp, which is rare for pork, we've had this discussion on a few videos recently that pork can be eaten rare because pork is actually classed as a red meat. Now, pork, it's something to do with the hemoglobin content that qualifies it as a red meat rather than a white meat. But there was a whole lot of promotional stuff for a long time about pork being the other white meat and things like that, so people assume it's a white meat. Now, if you Google it, it's classed as a red meat. There was things to do with worms in pork and all sorts of things as to why you had to cook it higher, and that's not an issue here in Australia. But also that rare point is still cooked well enough that it's cooked all the way through. It's just classed as rare, and if you've never tried it, it's really worth trying cooking it only to that rare point, because the texture of it is so much nicer. It's really soft and juicy, and it's not at all tough. So anyway, we do it to the 64 degrees. Once it hits the 64, it goes into foil, wrapped in foil for however long. The one that we did to eat that night was sliced up fairly promptly because it was dinner, but the rest got to rest for an hour or so in the foil to come down temperature a little bit before they were put in the fridge, so that we didn't have a temperature shock happening to make the meat sort of clench up and go a bit tough. I hadn't got around to making smoothie pops now that I had bought the extra molds, so the next day Apollo asked if he could do them, so I said sure. I talked him through what he was doing with the ratios of what I put in the smoothie and things like that. You don't have to put as much frozen fruit in a smoothie pop as you would in a smoothie, because if it's a bit thin, it's not a big deal because it's being frozen. So we opened a fresh goon bag of the coconut cream. I asked him if I could set up the camera and let it run while he was doing it, and he was fine with that, so I just put the camera up, pointed it at the bench, and walked away and let him go. Generally, we can get 2 molds full per jug. He made them the same way I generally do. We had frozen bananas and whatever else fruit we have available. Sometimes there's avocados, plums, strawberries, blueberries. We had some of the custard apple. We have all sorts of things that we throw into the smoothies. Normally add some chia seeds, and then I'm using the Macro Mike protein powder. This isn't sponsored at all, and I've mentioned it a few times recently, which is, be nice if it was sponsored, but Macro Mike is a dairy-free protein powder that has some really nice flavors, and it's a peanut or almond based protein, which I much prefer the flavor of than some of the other plant-based protein powders. So I've tried a few recently, and this one is the one that we prefer, and I got a bunch really cheap on an end of financial year sale. They actually had the Black Friday sale this month, and I was really tempted. I really wanted to try the Gay Time flavor because I love Gay Times, but I refrained because we still have quite a few bags left. And coconut cream, a bit of water to top it up if need be. It all goes in the Thermomix until it's smooth and then poured into the molds. The lid's placed on and the sticks through the holes. So I have 6 of these sets now, each one holds 12. So this, I allow 2 to 4 a day per child because they're only 90 mils. So when you think about if someone's making a smoothie and they're drinking a cup of smoothie, they're going to be easily drinking that 360 mils. But this means that it spaces it out throughout the day, stays good texture and quality in the frozen molds, but it does mean that they do go through them fairly quickly. They can go through 2 of these sets in a day if all 6 of them are having 4 in a day, which is fine. It just means that I have to be aware and make enough to cater for that. For dinner that night, we had a bunch of broccoli to still be used, and the kids love cheesy broccoli. So I made a quick dairy-free cheese sauce in the Thermomix. I used Nuttelex because it was handy, flour, coconut cream, nutritional yeast, a bit of chicken bouillon, salt, pepper and mustard, and put it in the Thermomix to cook. This is my basic. It's like a bechamel sauce, but a cheesy one. But the kids really like it. So this is not a stretchy one. It's just a white gravy type sauce. While that was cooking, I diced up some bacon, cooked it off in the enameled cast iron pan so I could stick this straight in the oven, adding in the broccoli to saute slightly before putting the cheese sauce over the kids. And then I just put a bit of butter and heavy cream in ours before topping it with some shredded cheese. Stuck them both in the oven until they were tender and bubbly. So everything was par cooked. It was just about getting everything into that good texture of being in the oven. While they were cooking, I cut up some rib fillet to go with it. So a couple of thicker pieces for Darryl and I and slightly thinner ones for the kids. I brought it to room temperature and then put it on a hot pan and salted it, cooking it to medium rare. I also cooked up some gravy for the kids to have with it as well, and there was actually some leftover sausages from the night before too, seeing as the end of the rib fillet, some of the pieces were smaller than others, so they could have some sausages as well if they wanted. And then that way there was enough meat for everyone, and they had the gravy and the cheesy broccoli and stuff as well. The next day, pizza was requested, so I did my normal pizza dough for the kids, though I reduced the quantities a little to make 6 bases instead of 8. I got the dough all mixed up and then proofed. Once it had doubled, I tipped it out and divided it into 6 balls. About 250 grams each is what I aim for. I coat them well in semolina and put them in a container to go in the fridge until ready to use them. And then I pull them out of the fridge about half an hour before I'm ready to try and shape them and things like that. For our pizza bases, I picked the ones made with raw chicken. Now, we have had something similar to this before when we used to do keto many years ago, so we wanted to try it again. There's a lot of variations for keto pizzas. So the carnivore pizza is generally the meat-based one. Keto pizza, there is some fathead dough and things like that uses some almond flour and melted mozzarella cheese and things like that, though I'm not entirely sure how I would go with melting the dough for those, because normally it's done in a microwave, so I'd have to do it on the stove top, and I'm not entirely sure how it'll work. I'll give it a go at some point, but the chicken one sounded good. But there are some that use cooked chicken, like cooked shredded chicken, some that use raw chicken, some that have an egg in it, some that have cheese in it. There's a whole variation of it. So we wanted to, I like to start with a baseline recipe and work from there. So this one was purely cheese and chicken. I used the pre-grated grana padano, which maybe I should have used something that had a little bit more moisture in it, though when this goes into a sauce it tends to go stringy, so there is some moisture in it. With just chicken breasts, they were the skin on chicken breasts that I bought. I took the skin off for it though. I used my Thermomix, so I put the chicken in and the cheese and pureed it to a paste. That's all I did. Then I spread the paste out as thin as I could on a pizza tray. I used a little bit of oil. It's fairly easy to manipulate, trying to keep it the same thickness all over, and nice and thin, because we want it sort of a thin and crispy base, because this is going to be sturdy. Like, this is chicken. Like, it's going to be a lot more filling than a bread base. So we want it nice and thin, so it's like a thin and crispy base, but also because it's going to be a lot. So, you know. I used 2 pieces of paper, rolling it, and a rolling pin to get it thin at one point. Now this has to cook before you top it. So it worked out well that I did this before I started making the kids' pizzas. So we rolled it all out. I could only find one pizza pan for some reason, so the other one was on a baking tray. And the baking tray actually worked a little bit better. I found the one on the pizza pan, because it had holes through the bottom, it overcooked a little bit more than I think it needed to. So spread it all out, got it in the oven to cook for about 30 minutes. We want this chicken to be fully cooked before we top it, because it's not going to cook properly if you then put like sauce on it and stuff. So this base is going to be completely cooked before we put any topping on it. While that's cooking, I got the kids done. So I had pulled out the pizza dough for the kids, and we did the normal. I used plenty of semolina. I stretched the dough out into a circle on the pizza peel. I used some roasted tomatoes I had pureed up as a pizza sauce, because I didn't have any actual pizza sauce at the time. And the kids have various, so some of the kids have anchovies, some have mushrooms, everyone has salami, everyone has whatever meat I put on. So we had leftover of that smoked roast pork, a bit of bacon. I always use tin corn, which is controversial for a lot of people, but I really like tin corn on my pizzas, and pineapple that I've previously canned and got off the shelf as well. So it's some of the kids, I just ask them as I make it, whoever gets the next pizza as I'm making it. We cook the pizza in a pizza box that sits on top of the barbecue, so it's one of those, it's lined on all sides with a ceramic pizza stone, and you put it on top of the open flame of the barbecue. You turn the barbecue on and it heats up. I do have a review video for it somewhere. I'll see if I can find it. We had a lot of problems with it initially. I couldn't get it hot enough to really make it worthwhile, but I realized that I need to close the hood on the barbecue. So you close the hood on the barbecue and get it really, really hot, and you close the hood on the barbecue while you're cooking it as well. Sometimes if the ambient temperature is a bit high, you have to open the lid because it's too much, but generally speaking, I cook it with the lid closed as well. I would really like a second one to make this whole process go a little bit quicker, but the barbecue I currently have doesn't have enough room to fit two of them. So that is something that we're going to look at when we upgrade this barbecue, is one that's wide enough to put two of those on there. I know there's lots of really nice looking pizza ovens out there. Thermomix sells a gorgeous one, but the fact that I can just put these on the barbecue and then store them on a shelf when I'm not using them is really convenient. It doesn't have to, like, it's no longer a single purpose thing. It's just a cooking vessel that can be put aside or put on the barbecue. Each child gets their own pizza. They generally don't eat a whole one, but they put their leftovers away and eat them for breakfast or lunch the next day. So I cook a whole pizza with whatever they want on it for each child, and it's up to them what they do with it over that meal and the next one. Once our chicken bases were cooked through, I topped them simply. A little roasted tomato and salami, cheese and bacon on mine. Darryl had some anchovies and mushrooms as well. Then back into the oven until the cheese is melted and all the toppings are warmed through, because that's all you're really doing. The base is already cooked. You're just warming through the toppings and melting the cheese. The pieces are sturdy enough to pick up, which is great. I did find the base a little dry. I think I'll try with an egg next time, though I think it won't get as chewy with the egg. It'll be a little more soft, but I liked the chewy texture because it felt right for a pizza base. I ended up dipping my slices in a bit of sour cream just to add some moisture to each mouthful, because I just found that it was just that little bit tacky and dry when I was eating it, and it was just a little bit too much. I didn't overdo the cheese on the topping either though, because it's got cheese in the base and I didn't want to make the base soggy either. So, you know, like I've pre-cooked the base, I put the sauce on it and everything. I didn't want to do too much. A lot of people who eat this carnivore have like an Alfredo sauce. Put an Alfredo sauce on it. You're gonna have to excuse the dogs. The kids have just jumped in the pool while I'm trying to do this. So the dogs are all excited because the kids are in the pool. So a lot of people use the Alfredo sauce instead of a tomato-based sauce because that's more carnivore. And I wanted to use the tomato as a more classic standard pizza sort of taste. And we enjoyed it, but I had to not go too heavy on the sauce either. So maybe it's about like, maybe I need like a marinara sauce, a nice low-carb marinara sauce, and I could dip the pizza pieces in that marinara sauce. That would probably work quite well. So not even worry about putting a sauce on the pizza, just put the cheese and the toppings and stuff, and then use the marinara sauce to either spoon over the top, like sit there with the, you know, the piece of pizza, spoon a bit of sauce and eat it, or dip it into something or something like that. I think that might actually work. We have made, probably in the next video, I have made some of the cottage cheese flatbread type stuff, and we've really enjoyed that, and there is people who use that as a pizza base, so we might give that a go at some point, though cottage cheese is really hard to get at the moment. And I made my own. It'll be in a next video, I think, but I only got like 450 grams out of 3 liters of milk, and it was a lot of effort. So we will see how we go with that. There's lots of treats and stuff that I wanted to bake over the Christmas period, and most of them use cottage cheese because that's the thing. It's a high protein, carnivore, low carb type thing, and a lot of these recipes are using it, which is why there isn't any. I'll show you a photo. I sent Darryl to Coles to get cottage cheese because they didn't have it on the click and collect, and this is the shelf where the cottage cheese is supposed to be. So everyone is obviously consuming it lots. When I do the groceries next, I will buy some really high quality milk, and I'll probably get a lot more cottage cheese out of a high quality milk than I will out of a standard Coles milk, but it's still a lot of effort to make the cottage cheese and wastage, and there's the whey, and I don't use whey in the kids smoothies or anything because there's a little too much dairy in that. I'd be a bit concerned that it's a bit too much for them, and the animals enjoy it and all, but it still feels like it's a waste. Those dogs. Anyway, so that was another few days of food prep, planning, preservation for the whole, November, December period. And I'm going to leave it at that because they're not going to be quiet. And I will see you guys on the next video, which will probably just be a food one. I haven't got the dates for the shop sale yet. I've got a couple of things that I'm still waiting on, so I really need to get them and inventoried in properly before I can set the sale up. So I will make sure to let everyone know. I will let everyone know on the Patreon first. I'll put a community post up, and I'll try and make sure that it's on a day that I do the video in the morning, that it's launched at night or whatever. And I'll announce it on Facebook and Instagram, and I'll send a newsletter out. So I'll send a newsletter out the morning of or whatever, so that the sale starts that night, or however, I'll try and get everyone noticed. So yeah, still working on that. And that's about it. So yeah, I will see you on the next video. Bye guys.